Hi, my name is Shama Nelson Godos, and welcome to the book replay. For today's replay, we'll be talking about the book The Bone River by Nkereuwem Albert. So yeah, it's been a while since I reviewed a book, and of course, mostly because I have been working on something. The first book I read after our last review was the Nkereuwem Albert's The Bone River. I just finally got a physical copy in my hand. This is not mine anyway, because the ARC they gave me was very, very copyright protected, and I haven't gotten like a physical copy yet. So to the people that are supposed to give me a physical copy. But yeah, so I read the book. I read it about 3 times, and then I got in conversation with the author. I just penned my review, and I was like, let's talk about the Bone River. Another reason why I had not reviewed it since was because I was waiting for it to get very, very old so that I could spoil it. Common sense dictates that let's have a year pass after the book has been published before we start spoiling it. And it has been 2 months, and I barely want to talk about this book. So I wrote a review where I don't get to spoil everything. And because I don't get to spoil it, we are not going to dive very deep into the book. But whether we dive deep or not, there's still a lot to talk about The Bone River. It's one of the best urban fantasy books that came out this year. Let's start with a short review. The Bone River is set in Calabar and is in a Calabar where there is magic. And in this city, there are 4 major houses who keep a secret peace not to attack each other. Now, when strange things start to happen that have the potential to disrupt this secret peace that keeps, the city normal and, out of war, Afem, one of our main characters, is employed by her father, the Bone Chief, one of the head of the houses, to discover the source of these incursions. Now, she has to work with, well, I would say her former friend, Honorary Henshaw, also known as H, to discover these incursions. So it becomes a story of friends who have become enemies, going around doing some detective work to find the source of, these disturbances in the magic of the city. Through their journey, we explore the magical world of Calabar, its rich culture, the nature of the magic in it, and we discover what is better at keeping the peace, a truth or several lies. The plot of The Bone River is great. The text gleans a love letter to Calabar and situates us in the veins of the city. We feel the pulse of the people, how they go about their daily business and what's sort of like important to them, the magic and the non-magic users. Nkereuwem packs a lot of lore inspired by pieces of Efik and Ibibio mythology and culture, and he delivers very delicious urban fantasy here. The main chat where we dive deep into like the aspects of the book without spoiling it are still on this channel. If you look up here, that's where the video pops out. It's important that you watch that because that will give you like a much more deeper appreciation for the book. Queue up that video in your watch later and relive the magic with us. This is the end of the short review, and you should stick around for the long review because, as you can see, it's not so long. So let's head into The Bone River. The author, Nkereuwem Albert, is not just a writer, but he's also a dentist. His works have been published in Ominana magazine, in Fear magazine, several other sci-fi magazines. The Bone River is his debut novel, published by the Phoenix imprint of Wida Books. While I record this, the Bone River tour is still flowing, so please catch the river wherever you can catch it. And I think the author will be at Ake Festival, so if you are watching this now, you might want to track his panel to listen to him talk about the book and his other ideas on writing. So I found the marketing of this novel to be sublime, and it tells because I think they've sold a lot of copies. Anytime I ask for a copy, they are like, oh yeah, we're expecting like a new imprint. So of course, marketing works for books, guys. So as an author, if you are going to sell your book, please have a marketing strategy. One thing I like that the author has done is that the author actually did like a book club tour. So he went to like, I think about 4 cities. I mean, this is urban fantasy. You market it amongst his target audience. And the target audience for urban fantasy are mostly young people and even younger people that are younger than the people who can even afford books. When you buy the book, you may be given like character cards because all of the characters, I mean the major characters that I mentioned here, they have all been drawn, and they were drawn by the artist who designed the book cover, and these drawings are like original, so they are not pulled up from somewhere. I think in this copy I have a card that shows H's weapon, and then I think there's another one, that shows Honorary Henshaw. Like, so when you buy some of the books, you might be lucky to get some of these cards, or you can buy the cards on your own. They make wonderful bookmarks, and I'm hoping to see a lot more merch roll out from this book. It's has the potential to become a cultural sensation. The Lovely Lady Drawn in Red by Jessica Lewis, the artist who drew this. This is Afem. Afem is one of the great characters. So as you can see her, she's in a red dress. She is the daughter of the Bone Chief from the House of Death, the users of Mpa. And of course, red represents blood because what is death without blood? And then we can see her bone blade as her bone sword. We can see that as a bone chief, she is dressed in, well, bone armor, and then at the back is the skull of a great mammoth, which is the throne of the bone chief. And at the back, we are here where we are at H, and we see H in purple and black with tattoos on her hair, tattoos on her arm, and she's with her staffs. H is the second main character, and she carries like a school bag that has her bag of talismans and her charms that she uses to fight. Onari Henshaw H is of the River House, and she's also a freelancer. H is fast becoming somebody that I'm like, I might hang out with this one day. The Bone River is a sizable book, and for the cost that it is sold, like 12K, I was like, hope like Phoenix Imprint is making money from these prints because it feels very solid. This is like after 2 weeks of carrying it around, and it has like a very nice reading experience. And we can see the author's name embossed in gold and the Bone River here. So I think this is like really good print. For the cover quality, I give it a 4 because while it is not the most eye-catching book because it has this dark brown green that doesn't jump out at you at a shelf. It does pack a lot of meaning. Whenever your cover glorifies your book's characters, you simply cannot go wrong. So, moving on into the text. So now the mood for this review is going to be uppity and leger because that is the mood of the writing in the book. And the Bone River is quite different from most of the books that I have reviewed on this channel. I mean, the Madhouse is deep. The Incredible Dreams of Tarabata Kaskos is weird to say the least. Even Nana Sule's book carries like a depth that, at the end you're like, okay, what happened here? One of the things I've heard a lot of Nigerian readers complain is that a lot of Nigeria stories are about trauma. They carry like too many serious themes. And while my argument has always been that, guys, we have a lot of problems. So there's definitely always going to be what you call trauma porn. There's definitely going to always be books that, talk about like these serious things. And don't forget that for a long time, only those kind of books like deep literary fiction was coming out of Africa and, selling to the other side. The fact that a book like The Bone River can sell, it's a signal that our industry is really opening up and it's opening up fast, and that we can write stories that we want to write and write the stories that we want to read. So like this is a net win. Big ups to Phoenix, big ups to Wida, big ups to Nkereuwem Albert. Now, if you don't like those books that are traumatic, The Bone River is right up your alley, because Nkereuwem doesn't try to drill too much into those deep philosophies that make his world possible, because there are a lot of things underneath his world that are dark that he could dive into. And there are so many chances for him to dive into those things in this novel, and I would have loved to bring out those chances and examine them and then pull the thread. But if I do that, I will spoil the book, and if I spoil the book, they will not give me ARC for the sequel. So I enjoy getting ARC. It fills me with so much joy when I get an advanced reader's copy. Instead of diving deep, The Bone River focuses on the characters and highlights the parts of them that make this plot work. And this is a fine plot-driven story where the characterization also gets a chance to shine. The Bone River is one of those works that wherever the editing axe swings, there is a lot that can be done with it. Because reading The Bone River from my critical standpoint was like looking upon a table where like there were several kinds of meat, and all you had to do was pick the meat that you wanted to put inside your pepper soup. Like it is based on what the author wants to present from the story, because whatever the author does with this world that they have built, they'll be able to create magic with it. The world itself and the building of it is already very magical. You simply cannot fail with this concept. And the mind that brought out this concept is such a beautiful mind. So, Nkereuwem Albert, well done. This is like really fantastic world building. For this work, Nkereuwem chooses to write an urban fantasy set in Calabar. And in doing so, he carves out, even just slightly, a wide range of topics that shows rather than dives deeply into what makes this rich culture tick. He dives into like the people, he dives into the thoughts in Calabar, he dives into the history of the town. And through that, he explores several shades of the wider society that we live in. In the hands of maybe another editor, is more tuned into something like literary fiction, this could become a whole different story. Same characters, same thoughts, same actions. They can still play with the language where this becomes something different. I did work out a premise for this book. My premise is that a peace built on a lie is simply fertile ground for little wars everywhere. And such a peace only lasts as long as these little wars don't coalesce and become like a big conflagration. But I think this is the one that really holds deep because it's kind of like the central philosophy that carries through the actions and the events in this novel. Our characters are set on their journeys and they think they are who they are because of the story that they have believed. If I say anything more than this, I'm going to spoil this book. So, moving on. There are no experiments with the structure of this story. The text is chronological with a few flashbacks, a few expository sections. It makes for easy reading. I finished this book in a day and I read it again and I read it again. And I just pick out parts of it because you can start and you just never stop. And I will add that people who are just learning English will benefit from reading this book. That's people who are probably at like maybe like a B2 upward level because the language is very light. It doesn't dive deep into where we break and remake the rules of grammar, break and remake meaning, and possibly invent meaning. That's one thing. What is invented in the language of the Bone River is possibly just the terms for the magic, but any other thing, we don't invent any law, and thank God, because that makes it very, very good for people who are just learning language. So, and people who are not that advanced in how they grasp the English language can actually read the Bone River. In fact, I recommend it to them. The Bone River's text actually thinks of the children. 13-year-old me will eat this book up, eat it 5 times, no crumbs. As it is good enough to recommend for children, but I would say that maybe a lot more conservative people might want some things changed inside, or maybe some things to be, less overt. But then again, that's a conversation for another time. That's an editorial conversation. And speaking of editorial conversation, this is a book that I think should be translated, or like the editors or the publisher should look into translation, because people who are still learning English can read and access this text. It's a story with an easily accessible language, so I would imagine that it will benefit from translation. I think if there was a French version of this book, I'll keep it in my library. In fact, maybe in the next editorial meeting, if they're looking for who will translate this book to French, I'll pitch to translate it in French, or in any of the languages that I know. Moving on to the characters, I would say that the most important character in this book is Calabar. Just like how we describe the physical attributes of a character in a book, their long hair, long fingers, and whatever. Calabar is described physically, socially, and emotionally because Calabar breathes, it eats, it dreams, and it even vomits in this novel. We move from Watts Market to the University of Calabar to GRA, and we even see some catfish, We even explore the abandoned places at the edge of the city. And throughout the book, I just get a sense that we are mourning something inside this town as it is being written about. Another inhuman characterization are the houses of magic in Calabar. So we're talking about like the House of Fire ruled by Okon Elder Fire, the House of Death of that Empire ruled by Ophion the Bone Chief. We're looking at the Masquerade House, we're looking at the Water House, and they probably like the other group of freelancers. But these houses are characterized by themselves. Nkereuwem takes great care to name these houses, to define them so that they feel real. I think it's an incredibly wise decision because the magic flows from these houses. So by knowing these houses and how they tick, there's much less work to be done when you, the reader, want to understand how the magic flows. So for our human characters, I'm just going to cover like the main two. Afem represents many things. I mean, first, I think she's a spoiled child with privileges, financial, and she's already blessed with talents and even with her station in life. She is the daughter of a bone chief. Her core journey deals with the politics of breaking free from an already established set destiny and, carving your path. She's kind of like in a position where she's mostly worshipped, but you can see her strain against her station. And I can see how like that privilege can also be a prison when it comes to like personal freedom. Mary Henshaw, that's H, is the other side of the coin. She's a person that life has taking and taking from, and her story details one of making the best out of what is left when you are fighting life itself. We're all going to die anyway, so the best thing to do while we are alive is to gain as much wins as we can, and that really just defines H's character for me. And these two characters, in their opposite ways, they bring like a lot of dynamic to this story, and there's even a lot more potential for this to be explored in the sequel as we dive deeper into this world and go to like a second layer. Oh God, I'm giving editorial direction again. Anyway, moving on. Now, other notable characters that stuck with me are Uti and Nini. And Nini is Hichi's mother. Beautiful story. Watch out for that story. It was gut wrenching. And then with Uti, which all of the women in this book are badass. And first, this ties into like the matriarchal nature of the culture that this book is set in. Yeah, we discussed this in the interview. Like, if there's anybody who has ever questioned the spaces, or you wanted to discover the kind of spaces women occupy in a society dominated by men and what silent power means, I think the Bone River does a great job of portraying women in these positions and showing just how strong they are, even in the places that we don't think that they are strong. So that there's a whole lot to discuss about like women and their things, but I will save that for a personal book chat with the author. So now for themes, Nkereuwem covers so much ground, and what he does is that he presents these ideas on a platform. We are not going deep to understand the super history and the psychoanalysis. No. By the time we start doing that, it sort of like pushes us a little too much into reality, and that fantasy element sort of starts to struggle in the heart of the reader. I mean, there's a balance that you can strike, and there are works that have struck that balance. But for what I consider the first novel of a series, because I can see one here, which means that a sequel is coming. So I imagine that in the later books, we're going to dive deeper into those philosophies, and I'm really looking forward to experiencing that. One of the things that the Bone River does very well is that it takes a look at family dynamics in conventional families and mostly unconventional families. So we're looking at the house of the bone chief and the kind of relationships that result from that. But also in this book, we examine power, its preservation, its administration, and how it is controlled. One of the questions that I think was raised was how long is too long for one person to stay in power, and we sort of like explore the possible decay and stagnation of that system. So that is done on like a very light level. Yeah, I mean, I saw that. We also examine the tenuous connections that we as people in the world have with the peace that we enjoy. And we dive a little deeper into what it takes to maintain that peace, into what really takes to maintain peace when everybody involved in keeping that peace can destroy themselves in like 2 or 3 days. I made a connection with like the great superpowers that we have in the world, as the G7 that all have nukes and stuff. And I started to imagine that perhaps the reason why we haven't like nuked each other yet, despite the fact that these powers, it seems as if they hate each other for some weird reason. Maybe the reason why we're enjoying some sort of relative peace is probably because we are all lying to ourselves to some degree. Because if all the cultures and the countries and the peoples were really to examine the truth of their histories and really, really, really just look at where they are coming from and where they want to go, I think that a lot of the sovereign nations that we have now are going to fall apart. And the Bone River touches on that in this microcosm that Nkereuwem has created, in the sense that whenever you have powers that are selfish and only looking for their own gain, sometimes the only path to peace is a big lie. But then again, the lie is not sustainable. So, what is the path to peace? What is the path to equilibrium? These are questions that I think when I read this book. So, yeah, I will stop here. This is kind of like everything about the text and the book that I can say for now before we dive into deeper discussions. So, at the end of this, I'll say that if you are looking for a read this holiday, that's for yourself. You're looking for like a new universe to commit to, something that you can read as well as any teenager in your house. I think The Bone River is a perfect pick. I mean, it's nicely done. It has a good reading experience, and it's bulky enough to actually keep you for a while, keep you busy. And I think that it would be a crime against anybody who read this book if there is no sequel. So, Phoenix, reader, please, please. And I hope that this book is actually translated, even if it's going to possibly like an e-copy or something. This has been the book replay for the Bone River, and I do hope that you have a good time reading it. And if you read it and you don't have anybody to discuss it with, you people know where I am now. Hit me up wherever you can hit me up. Hit with a VN, and trust me that I'll always be there to listen and give my 2 cents, because I don't think there's anything that keeps me saner than talking about books and the stories that I like. So, thank you so much for sitting through this review. I will see you all at the next review. Bye.